Many drivers assume that new cars fail only because of manufacturing flaws. But the truth is that's accurate just 12% of the time, which means the remaining 88% is caused by the driver's own habits. In this video, I'm breaking down 17 hidden behaviors that quietly destroy your car long before it reaches 50,000 miles. Some of these issues might cost a few $100s to repair, while others can completely ruin your vehicle and even damage your credit score. And at the end, I'll reveal one mistake that destroyed a car in under 3,000 miles. Number 17. Warming your car wrong during winter. Let's begin with the number one killer of engine longevity. You've likely heard the statistic that 75% of engine wear occurs during startup. However, it's not the act of switching the car on that is a problem. The real danger happens when or how you step on the accelerator. The first mistake people make is idling. The first problem with idling is that it leaves a lot of unburnt fuel on the cylinder walls, which fouls spark plugs and can damage the exhaust system. The second problem is that it causes condensation and carbon deposits that contaminate oil. This can cause corrosion, which can eat up an engine in as little as 5 years. The other mistake people make is revving the engine before it warms up. It takes oil 10 to 30 seconds to reach critical components like piston rings, the camshaft, and the turbo. If you rev the engine before the oil gets there, it will create a lot of metal-to-metal contact. This can cause bearing failure if the bearings collide with the crankshaft. This can cost up to $5,000 to fix. The right way to warm your car during winter is to let it idle for 30 to 60 seconds, then drive it at a moderate speed for the first 5 minutes. Once the engine is warm, you can speed up, but don't drive like a maniac. That comes with its own risks, which I'll discuss at number 7. But first, let's look at another innocent mistake that wrecks engines fast. Number 16. Frequent short trips. If you bought a car and most of your commute is within a 10-mile radius, you shouldn't have bothered. I know the dealer told you it was fine, but lying is their day job. Any trip that doesn't allow your vehicle to reach its optimal temperature, an engine destroyer for 3 reasons. The first is that short trips result in moisture buildup. Water is a natural byproduct of combustion. However, the excess moisture gets burned up at 212 F. If your car doesn't get this hot, the water will cause sludge formation and corrosion in your exhaust system. The second problem is that cold engines don't burn fuel efficiently. That unburned fuel seeps past the piston rings and into the oil. This drastically reduces the lubricating power of oil, which can cause some of the problems we discussed in the previous point. The third problem is potential damage to your catalytic converter. Your CAT converter needs to run between 750 and 1150 F or 600 C to burn off harmful emissions. If it doesn't get that hot, it will clog and need a replacement. That's a $2,000 job at best. However, don't be surprised to get a bill of over twice that, depending on your car. If you must make a short trip, go the long way round or combine trips. Then once a week, hit the highway and gun it at least 60 miles per hour for 20 to 30 minutes. However, whenever it's time to floor it and you drive a manual, be careful of the next habit. Number 15. Lugging the engine. There is a reason why pure motorists love manuals. They are cheaper, more fun to drive, and cheaper to maintain. However, one wrong move can bring your car to a grinding halt. Lugging is when you're into higher gear for the current speed, which forces the engine to work harder. That grumbling, jerking, or chugging sensation is a sign that your car is being pushed past its limit. If you drive a turbo, you might also hear a pinging or knocking sound. This is the result of uncontrolled combustion within the cylinder. This can damage pistons, bend connecting rods, and even cause catastrophic engine failure. And no, this doesn't only happen to high-mileage cars. I've seen cars suffer irreparable detonation damage in as little as 30 minutes. Lugging the engine also starves the engine of oil. With less oil flow, the crankshaft and the wheel bearings are more likely to collide. Again, you're looking at damage worth thousands of dollars. If you're new to driving a manual transmission, you need to watch this video. 13 deadly mistakes manual drivers make. You can save it for later because up next is another destructive habit you can't afford to miss. Number 14. Resting on the gear shift. Sure, it might seem like it's saving you time or might even look cool, but resting on the gear shift can ruin your credit score. This seemingly innocent habit can end up costing you $2,000 in repairs. That's because applying even the slightest pressure on the gear shift causes the selector fork to come in contact with the rotating synchronizer collar. These components are designed for brief contact only. Any longer and it will generate a lot of friction and heat, which will eventually damage the fork. When this happens, your transmission will begin to shift poorly, or you could even get stuck in gear. What is even more frightening is that while you're driving, the gear could just slip into neutral. On the highway, that's the recipe for an accident. However, a failing fork is easy to spot. You'll hear weird noises when you shift, and changing gears will become difficult. That's your cue to see a mechanic or risk a catastrophic event. Speaking of catastrophic events, the next habit takes the prize. Number 13, leaving the car in park without the handbrake. Over the past 5 years, Kia and Ford have recalled a combined 1.5 million cars because of faulty handbrakes. If you go back even further, Mazda, Toyota, and Mitsubishi have also issued massive recalls for the same problem in the past decade. Why is it such a big deal? After all, aren't the cars in park? When a car is put in park, the entire weight of the car is placed on a small piece of metal called the parking pawl. While this metal is strong, it has a hard time competing with gravity. When you park on a hill, you're putting too much pressure on the pawl, which can cause it to break. All of a sudden, your stationary vehicle begins to move by itself. At the very least, you're looking at damage to your vehicle in the thousands. Let's not even bring up what could happen if your car slams into pedestrians. The correct parking sequence is to put your car in neutral, engage the handbrake, then move into park. This way, the pressure will be on the rear brakes instead of the pawl. Later in the video, I'll expose another major problem drivers make with the gear shift. But first, let's discuss something that can wreck an engine in fewer than 20,000 miles. Number 12, overusing launch controlaunch. Control might feel like the perfect party trick, but there's a reason manufacturers hide it behind multiple steps. It wasn't designed for everyday red light drama. It was built for the racetrack, and car makers know exactly how much strain it creates. That's why many brands limit how many times you can actually use it before the system disables itself. Some even use the counter as a quiet way to void your warranty. Every launch forces insane stress onto the clutch, transmission, drift shaft, and axles. The BMW Z F8 transmission, for example, stops allowing launches after around 50 uses. Exotic cars like the Lamborghini Huracan might let you do it 200 to 250 times, but even those aren't meant for constant abuse. Repeated launches in quick succession can trigger limp mode or full mechanical failure. I've personally seen gearboxes die before 20,000 miles thanks to launch control addiction. If your car has it, check your manual and warranty details. One moment of fun isn't worth a $10,000 repair bill. Number 11. Using low-quality fuel. Carbon buildup is unavoidable, but how fast it forms depends heavily on your fuel choice. After about 30,000 miles, the deposits start affecting performance, which is why experts recommend decarbonizing every couple of years. But that schedule only applies when you're using poor quality fuel. All gasoline contains additives, but not all fuel is equal. Regular pump gas, even premium, often doesn't have enough detergents to keep your engine clean. That's why automakers endorse top-tier fuel. According to AAA, non-top-tier gasoline leaves 19 times more deposits compared to engines running on top-tier options. Over time, that gunk leads to rough idling, reduced mileage, loss of power, and the need for expensive cleanings that average around $1,000. Saving a few cents per gallon can cost you far more later. And if you think cheap fuel is harmless, the next mistake might convince you otherwise. Number 10. Constantly driving with low fuel. Nearly 3/4 of drivers rely on the miles to empty reading to decide when to fuel up. Everyone wants to squeeze every drop out of the tank, but constantly running low comes at a price. First, the system isn't always accurate. It can underestimate your remaining fuel and leave you stranded. But the bigger danger is to your fuel pump. These pumps rely on gasoline to stay cool and lubricated. When the level gets too low, the pump overheats and wears out prematurely. A pump built to last 100,000 miles can fail in half that time. You make a habit of running on fumes. Replacements often cost up to $1,000, and worse, a failing pump can cause sudden stalling, a serious highway risk. Keep your tank above 1/4 full, and never let it drop below 1/8. Forgive yourself for forgetting once or twice, but don't make it a lifestyle. Number 9. Using the wrong oil. Viscosity. Earlier, we talked about cold starts destroying engines. Here's the twist. Even perfect warm-up technique won't save you if your oil's viscosity is wrong. Modern engines are engineered with extremely tight internal tolerances. Using a thicker oil, like 10W for O instead of the recommended OW20, slows circulation and causes oil starvation that leads to overheating. VVT variable valve timing issues, and extreme friction. Sure, lower fuel economy is an annoyance, but that's nothing compared to warped cylinder heads, cracked blocks, or transmission damage. Those repairs easily exceed $4,000, double if both engine and transmission are affected. Valvoline itself warns that the wrong viscosity can ruin an engine in under 15,000 miles. That's why manufacturers print the viscosity rating right on the oil cap. If you've made this mistake, don't wait, do a full flush now. And believe it or not, the next mistake is even more brutal. Number 8. Using cheap aftermarket additives. Americans buy over 580 million liters of bottled fuel additives every year, yet none are officially endorsed by regulatory bodies. That's because most additives make big promises but deliver nothing. Some claim to boost fuel economy by 20%, others pretend to raise octane magically, and the worst ones swear they can repair worn engine components. Most mechanics consider these products snake oil, especially because fuel and oil already contain additives designed by actual chemists. Top-tier gasoline alone has more p-polyethylamine than the majority of bottled additives. But if you've been watching this channel, you know we support additives, the right ones, backed by testing. I've seen legitimate cleaners restore MPG, clear carbon, and even help catalytic converters, but cheap, untested additives can destroy an engine within minutes. We broke this down in detail in another video: 13 engine additives that work, and 5 that will kill your car. Up next is a habit that doesn't just damage your engine, it puts your life on the line. Number 7. Driving aggressively. A brand new car tempts you to push it hard, almost like proving yourself to the machine. But unless you have the budget to replace major components, driving it like you stole it is a terrible idea. Rapid acceleration and hard braking burn through fuel and stress nearly every mechanical system. The U.S. Department of Energy found that aggressive driving cuts fuel economy by up to 30% on highways and 40% in stop-and-go traffic. That's essentially throwing away over $1 per gallon. Hard braking also heats components to nearly 500 F, warping rotors and wearing pads and calipers prematurely. Combine that with the fact that 35% of maintenance-related crashes stem from tire issues, and you see how dangerous aggressive driving becomes. Even if your tires hold up, your engine and transmission won't. High stress cycles can destroy drivetrain components in as little as 30,000 miles, and the next habit can send a car to the junkyard just as quickly. Number 6. Using cheap jumper cables. Jumpstarting a battery sounds basic. Every driver should know how to do it. But modern cars have become rolling computers, with 30 to 50 ECUs in standard vehicles and over 100 in luxury models. One wrong connection or a low-quality cable can fry electronics instantly. Cheap jumper cables can melt, spark, or even catch fire. Worse, they can damage sensitive modules such as airbags, ABS systems, and engine control units. In some cases, the repair bill becomes so overwhelming that replacing the entire car is cheaper. Invest in a high-quality set. Cartman jumper cables, for example, cost under $30 on Amazon and are extremely dependable. And as bad as cheap cables are, the next mistake is even worse. Number 5. Overloading your car. More than 80% of truck accidents involve overloading. And while regular cars aren't as extreme, the risks remain serious. Exceeding your vehicle's GVW, or gross vehicle weight rating, puts tremendous strain on suspension, brakes, and the drivetrain. That's why automakers print the weight limit on the door jamb. Repeated overloading wears out shocks, struts, and springs, leading to suspension repairs that can exceed $2,000. But the financial cost isn't the worst part. Overloaded cars handle poorly, take longer to stop, and are far more likely to be involved in accidents. One mistake can lead to a totaled car or a lawsuit, unfortunately. The next habit is just as dangerous. Number 4. Using the wrong tire pressure. Tire problems cause over 11,000 accidents per year, according to the NHTSA, and the biggest culprit? Incorrect tire pressure. Both underinflation and overinflation lead to blowouts, long braking distances, and poor traction. Many drivers mistakenly think the number on the tire's sidewall is the correct PSI. It's not. That's the maximum pressure the tire can tolerate, not the recommended pressure for your vehicle. The correct PSI is printed on the driver's side door jamb. You should check your tire pressure monthly, not only when the warning light comes on. That light activates when your tire is already 25% below the recommended PSI, and at that point, your risk of a crash triples. Incorrect pressure also reduces fuel economy. weakens handling, and stresses suspension components. If you value your life and your car, take tire pressure seriously. But the next mistake is just as costly. Number 3. Riding the clutch. Driving a manual feels exciting. Smooth shifts, perfect timing, complete control. But resting your foot on the clutch pedal is the fastest way to destroy that system. Even slight pressure causes the release bearing to make contact with the pressure plate. That friction grinds both components down. Constant clutch riding often leads to premature clutch replacement, usually costing around $2,500. The throwout bearing can fail in as little as 40,000 miles if this habit continues. Break the habit now, or your clutch will break first, along with your wallet, and believe it or not. The next mistake is even dumber. Number 2. Shifting from drive to reverse before stopping. This is one of the most reckless habits a driver can have, and it's shockingly common. Switching from drive to reverse, or the other way around, while the car is still moving, forces the transmission to act as the brake. This creates massive shock loads on gears, synchronizers, and dog teeth. Over time, it destroys the transmission, driveshaft, and axles. Once your gearbox fails, expect to pay up to $7,000 for a replacement, and as crazy as it sounds, the final habit on this list is even more catastrophic. Number 1. Using cheap aftermarket performance chips. People love squeezing more power out of their cars, and an EcuTune can safely deliver an extra 5% horsepower if a skilled, reputable tuner handles it. Cheap plugs, knockoff performance chips, and aggressive tunes are a different story entirely. These chips alter ignition timing, boost pressure, and fuel delivery without accounting for hardware limitations. That leads to blown pistons, overheating, detonation, and full engine failure. In fact, poorly done tunes cause more engine explosions under 30,000 miles than almost anything else. They also void your warranty and can make insurance refuse claims. One driver in the UK tuned his Lotus Elite and suffered catastrophic engine failure just 4,000 kilometers later. The repair cost? At least $12,000. If he was lucky. Cheap performance mods aren't upgrades, they're silent weapons against your own engine.